Oh, I like Jim Hill, he's a good friend of mine. That's why I'm a hiking down Jim Hill's main line. Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout, revive us again. I went to a house and I knocked on the door, and the lady said, bum, bum, you been here before. Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout, revive us again. I went to a house and I asked for some bread, and the lady said, bum, bum, the baker is dead. Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout, revive us again. Oh, why don't you work like other men do? How can I work when there's no work to do? Hallelujah, I'm a bum. Hallelujah, bum again. Hallelujah, give us a handout, revive us again.
I'm still Zac Heyer, and I'm outside. I'm outside with my grandfather now. His name's Warren, and first I'm going to speak to him a little bit more about the Depression, and then I'm going to talk to him about his experience as a World War II soldier. So first I'd like to ask you a little bit, just to speak about the intro song.
Oh, the song?
The Depression song.
How'd you like that?
It was, I've heard it before.
You heard it? How about
yeah.
you? Well, that was a song of the Depression, and it's lots of people who were bums, who were homeless, and who walked around, walked down the tracks. The first verse was, I like Jim Hill, a good friend of mine. Jim Hill was the entrepreneur who built the Great Northern Railway from Chicago to Seattle, Washington, and I lived in Washington, and along the Great Northern Railroad, and so I guess maybe we heard that song a little bit more than other people did. And it was based on a church song, Hallelujah, Thine the Glory. And the church that I went to, they didn't like it. They used it, but the tune was appropriated for Hallelujah, I'm a Bum.
I just want to ask you some of your thoughts or feelings about Franklin Delano Roosevelt as president.
We were, my family was very, very keen on Roosevelt. They were Democrats. They thought anybody would be crazy to vote for that villain Hoover. They thought he was completely incompetent, and he didn't like poor people at all. And I felt the same way. And like my wife Roberta, I'm still a Democrat.
He set up the New Deal, and it had lots of programs in it. Some failed, and some of them actually were quite successful. What were some of the ones that really were
the ones I knew about? The ones I knew about were the CCC. There were a lot of, in my high school class, a lot of fellows didn't have any money, and they saw that the CCC was a good way to get a job, and they were all enthusiastic about going. But there was a little bit of low status, I think, for getting into the CCC too. I think partly because they were using cast-off Army uniforms, and it wasn't a very glamorous thing, but they did a lot of good, and we heard about the good that they were doing then, and we still hear of the good that they were doing. WPA, everybody talked about people standing around leaning on a shovel. In fact, we knew, the people like my family knew about WPA and knew that the good things that they were doing. One of the things, of course, was, I guess it was a PWA, but it was with public funds. It was a Grand Coulee Dam, and we lived in the state of Washington, and we went over to the in our old Model A Ford, went over to where the dam was being dedicated. It hadn't been built yet. The road was not paved, and it was a hot summer, and we drove through this dust, and the clouds of dust were so thick you couldn't see the road. I didn't know anybody could drive, but it was a pilgrimage for us. We wanted to see the great man, and I don't remember seeing him because there were so many people there. But he was worshipped, and my family worshipped him. They all became my aunt and my grandmother. They all became a lot more conservative during the war and after the war. They became they weren't as enthusiastic Democrats. They're like older people. As people get old, they tend to become. I'm not. We remember the NRA only by name, and I thought it was a great thing. I thought it was helping to end the Depression. But, and I couldn't understand, I know that everybody was really dismayed when it was declared unconstitutional, and I never did understand why it was thrown out. I thought it was the Supreme Court working against FDR. The fireside chats, you asked Roberta about those, and oh my goodness, everybody just hung on his words, and they were afraid. The people in this country were afraid, and he was a very calming voice, and they thought that the things were really bad, and the people who were unemployed, and they were in bad, and feeling bad, and they were feeling useless because they didn't have a job, and the people who had good jobs, they were concerned too, because they saw this massive army of people without jobs. They were really kind of afraid of a revolution. But I wasn't aware of any of all that. I was kind of comfortable, even though, like Roberta, my mother was a single woman raising 3 kids, and she was sick, and so it was my aunt that had to raise us. And we were in central Washington, a little town called Chelan, on the shores of Lake Chelan, and she was, my aunt was just took us in, and so we lived in a little apartment beside the lake, behind her beauty shop that she had started, and there were 5 kids and several adults living there, and the bathtub was in the living room, and I thought it was great fun living in those crowded quarters, but I'm sure the grown-ups didn't care for it too much. And she would, there was a lot of bartering going on, and she would do the hair of, she was a beautician, so she would do the in the little town of Chelan, and instead of paying her, they would give her free services, like the Ruby Theater. The owner of the Ruby Theater would come and get her hair done, and Gladys, my aunt, couldn't pay, and so we all got to go to the movies free. And I always thought it was, everybody could just wave their hands as they went by the box office and get in free, and it was years later that I found out that it was payments for services rendered.